Bunny League, now starring the bunny. She's super strong and super naked. Also, Cat Girl. She pounces like a cat.
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from a Scottish port aboard this tiny ship.
And Bald Man, who's bald.
You know, I could have a problem with that, but maybe I should just be optimistic. Why cry about bad weather? Enjoy it. Each moment is a treasure. Enjoy it.
And I'm your host, Zenith the Bunny, and welcome to the show presented by Kablam!
Where cartoons and comics collide.
Hello, everybody. I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest ghost buns, and welcome back to the Disney Debate, brought to you by Kablam, where Kat Macberrie, Doug Macberrie, and myself talk about Disney films and Disney in general. We discuss all the things, but we just wanted to do something different because I miss Action League now.
I miss Sniz and Fondue.
So before we begin talking about this film, Kat, how's it going?
I'm sailing across the sea. Go watching another Disney film that's about castaways. Man, that we didn't watch. How long ago did we watch? What was it, Swiss Family Robinson? How long ago did we watch that film?
It must have been a couple years at this point because I barely remember it, and it was before some of the others. Like, there was a lot of boy and his dog stories for a while there, but it's been a while.
Oh yes, certainly has. And it's interesting because back then we watched a film starring a lead character by the name of Mills, and now we're doing it again with this movie. Yay.
Hooray!
Question mark?
And Mr. Bald, I mean Doug, how's it going?
Well, any day's a good day when you mention Kablam. That show is so good. I used to love watching it on Friday nights. And yes, this movie was actually quite enjoyable. Granted, it is ridiculous at some points, but enjoyable. I did not want to hate myself or hurt myself in any way after watching it.
Yay, positives.
All right. Positive. You gotta think positive. Enjoy it.
Enjoy it.
Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Enjoy. So, many of you have been following us for a long time. However, looking at it now, it has been 5 years since we last touched upon a film in this vein. A film that has the adventure serialization about it. And it's not for lack of liking some of these films, it's just there was kind of a dearth of information. Sometimes we wanted to touch upon different things, but exactly about 5 years ago, back in 2021, episode 68, we covered the Swiss Family Robinson. And that was a fun little adventure film, but I didn't really like it, and I think part of it is, it's not a bad book, but there's really no goal to it. It has these castaways on a desert island. It's supposed to be this fantasy, and it's around when things started shifting into the boy and his dog territory. So, we haven't talked about adventure films in quite a while. Disney is known for adapting classic novels. They've done quite a few ones. They've already done a Jules Verne adaptation from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I really enjoyed it. But they didn't really do a lot with it past that point. They had a different classic author for Swiss Family Robinson, and that was a bit too aimless for my mind span. I know some people really criticize us for oh, well, you don't like a pointless story. You don't like a story that just kind of goes places. And here's my thing. When I read classic literature, I need there to be a goal. I need there to be a point, a cohesion. I don't expect it to have modern sensibilities. But as Simpsons once said, I don't want it to be just a bunch of stuff that happens. And if you take a look at some older novels, a lot of times it's like, it reads as a diary. And then this happened, and then this happened. I classify.
When are they going to get to the fireworks factory?
Yeah, when are they going to get to the fireworks factory? Like, Swiss Family Robinson is a book that I classify as an and then story. And then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. Which, yeah, is realistic, but it's not narratively fun for me to read. And then you have stuff where, because this happened, this then happened. And that's what we're starting to get a trend of for a while. Unfortunately, when Disney moved away from the adventure era and didn't know what they were going to do in the 60s, they really had trouble moving away from the and then story frame. We got a lot of pointless stories, a lot of stories that had nothing. Bon voyage, just stuff that just events that happen and supposed to be wacky, fun comedy, and just not much actually goes there. And you don't have to have a goal, but you have to have a narrative cohesion to the point where I care about these characters or I care about what's going to happen. I think Jules Verne always has that. Journey to the Center of the Earth. I really enjoyed that book. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Jules Verne has a lot of classic stories. And I haven't read Captain Grant's Children, which the film that we're talking about is based on, but honestly, I really enjoyed this adaptation. It kind of feels a lot like Jules Verne's take on Treasure Island, and Disney is rife for making this. So we're going to be talking about In Search of the Castaways, and before we get into what this film is, Kat, what is your thoughts on what I just said?
I do agree. I'm also of the mind that if I'm gonna read a story, there should be some sort of end goal or point to it all, and not just be a series of random events. Granted, stories can be interesting, like if, think of a TV series where, let's take these characters and put them in this situation and see how they do. It is an ongoing thing, like, yeah, it could be okay, but after a while you're like, okay, what's the point? It's like you said, Jules Verne's novels mostly had a point to them, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. They're literally going under the sea to look for stuff. The Journey to the Center of the Earth, they're literally traveling to the center of the earth. Around the World in 80 Days, the guy's trying to travel around the world in 80 days. There's always a purpose, and it's usually right there in the title, too. So, I applaud Jules Verne for at least having that much over other adventure films that we've seen before. But yeah, I will say though, it's weird because you don't often think about this, but Jules Verne is technically one of the grandfathers of science fiction, and it's not until you actually read his novels or watch the movies based on the novels that you realize just how utterly batshit insane some of the adventures are. And honestly, I'm all here for it.
Yeah. Now, Doug, what are your thoughts on Jules Verne? Have you read any of the books?
I have not read any of the books. But I mean, one thing I noticed, especially with the early Disney stuff, is, how you were saying, they pretty much, it feels like a diary, or, it feels like they're just following chapter by chapter by chapter, basically being maybe a little too faithful to the source material. So it's there's, being faithful to the original source material, but then there's also, being so faithful that you lose, the film medium of it and make it feel more like you're just making the book into something animated, which sounds good, but ultimately it's just like you're doing a motion comic sort of thing, and it
Yeah.
kind of loses any real enjoyment.
Mm. It's kind of a fine line, and it's like, you know, when we talk about stuff like Nicky, Wild Dog of the North, or Big Red. Big Red was a lot like that.
Or Lobo.
Like there's been a lot. Lobo was especially guilty of this. You have a lot of these films where it has stuff that happens, but narratively none of these stuff mesh together, and I would be fine reading about them as a documentary, but when you present them as a film documentary or as a story, you need to have a through line or something to catch my attention. So having an adaptation of Jules Verne next on the block had me excited, and I was actually pleasantly surprised by this film. In Search of the Castaways, also known as The Castaways, is a 1962 American adventure film starring Maurice Chevalier and Hayley Mills. And much like most of Jules Verne's tales, it's about trying to find something. Basically, these two kids of a captain who's been lost at sea, they believe him to be completely, like, dead and gone, find a letter in a bottle, and they're going to find their father, Captain Grant. And, like, that premise alone had me hooked, because I'm just like, oh, it's a classic adventure serial. We're not having some freaky, you know, moon pilot experience where we have just random spy monkeys and monkeys astronauts and stuff like that. We're actually going to have a through line, and like, I love Jules Verne. There are problems that I'm going to bring up later about Jules Verne's writing in regards to one or two specific points, but when it comes to the adventure aspect, this really nailed it. This is about them getting a captain along with a professor who found the note initially, brought it to them, getting a crew, sailing around, going all the way across the world to find their father. And I love that premise, Doug.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have liked it a little better if there was maybe a point, a little more relevance to them going all the way across the world, and then, but it winds up being ultimately for nothing. And we spend a lot of time, in South America initially, all for it to be, the completely wrong place. So in that aspect, I'm not too happy about it, but at least, there's enough to entertain me to make me forget about it.
Mm. And Kat, what are your thoughts?
Oh no, it's a classic. You find a message in a bottle, and it's either, for treasure or to find a lost person or something. Like, it's the ultimate goal. It's a great setup, and the journey of watching them trying to obtain a ship, trying to find people that are willing to help them, all the dangers that they encounter along the way. It's like the perfect adventure story. And yes, like Doug said, it does kind of meander in the middle to the point of pointlessness, but it's the journey that you really get the most entertainment out, because again, Jules Verne novels tend to go really batshit insane. Like, again, like it's obvious that he kind of wants to, like, make things exciting, even if they're not realistic, but that's kind of what makes it amazing. So, yeah, like, it's like, you look at this, you scratch your head, and you're thinking to yourself, wait, could that actually happen? And I gotta tell you, I did so much research on this because he made me, like, think of that question. So, I will applaud this. I will applaud this movie for actually making me do homework. So, even though I hated school and I hated doing homework.
So, in essence, this is in Britain in 1858, Professor Paganel, a scientifically thinking French geography professor, which is, okay, finds a bottle containing a note which he believes to have been written by the missing Captain John Grant. He gives it to their two teenage children, and Mary and Robert, and they approach the person who owns Captain Grant's ship, and they persuade them to finance a search expedition, which the captain personally does. Now, the thing about this that got me is this is a comedy adventure. And given how we've seen things in the past, Bon Voyage, some of the other that are supposed to be funny and miss the mark, this actually works. I don't know if it's the presentation, I don't know if it's the acting, but I think a lot of it works because they still keep the adventuring aspect. There's still that goal, there's still that end in sight, but you still have like this professor who's constantly like breaking the law and breaking rules and like sneaks into the shipyard and steals some of the hors d'oeuvres and helps the children to some hors d'oeuvres and like is constantly doing things that a professor shouldn't do, and he's kind of funny. And then you have this captain who's the owner of Captain Grant's ship, Magnate Lord Glenarvan, who is incredibly dumb but thinks himself really smart. And I love the dynamic between these two. You have someone who's actually smart but acts a buffoon, and then you have someone who is dumb but thinks he's smart. And you have this constant back and forth, plus eat the rich. You know, this rich person who thinks he has everything solved ends up not having everything solved half the time. And granted, he's right about Grant being in Australia. However, like, he's wrong about why they would be there, and he doesn't piece the clues together like the professor does. And it's just like, it's a nice classic, I don't want to say Dumb and Dumber, but it's like these characters play off each other really well, Doug.
I mean, yeah, I'll give you that. It does. Honestly, like, the initial, meeting of them is just so steeped in chaos. It's like it kind of took me out of it a bit because I didn't really know exactly what they were going for. I thought at first, like, it's just like these kids are trying to sneak their way on and get, a taste of rich society. I didn't realize that, they had found a message in a bottle and they're trying to actually get help from these people. So and then, like I said, then I will say it is funny when the professor just kind of like causes distraction and, just kind of merrily sneaks his way on board the boat and then just gingerly is stealing hors d'oeuvres from the tray there. But, I mean, I will say it definitely speaks to what kind of character he is as we go along.
Mm-hmm. Kat?
Yeah, I do like their dynamic. Because, like, obviously the Lord was it Glenarvan? The guy's weird last name is so weird to say. Yeah, he's
Glenarvan.
Glenarvan. Bleh. Yeah, he's like your typical rich person, but you can at least argue he has somewhat of a conscience since he does ultimately help the kids. From what I read, he actually was a lot more altruistic in the novel. So it makes me question why they made him such a jerk in this, but I guess to create tension or something like that. Because also in the novel, the Jacques Panigel character, he actually wanders on by accident. He meant to board a ship for India, but he ends up on their ship as they're going off to South America. So he's just like, oh, well, I guess I'll join your expedition. At least here in the movie, it makes more sense as to why he's part of the journey, because he does find the bottle, he does tell the children, and he does try to help them get to the one person that can finance them and bring them to their father. So in that sense, it works a lot better, the setup. I do agree that the beginning is kind of like abrupt with how they throw all the characters into the story and like get them together, because they don't adequately explain at first, like why the children are there, how they got there, why they're with this weird person who is not their guardian. So yeah, it took me a bit to like get the grasp of the story. But once I did, I'm like, okay, so yeah, your typical search and rescue story. So okay, now I get it. yeah, I just like, aside from the abruptness, it is still a good setup regardless. And I do like their dynamic,
Yeah.
the two of them throughout the film.
Yeah, I'll agree. It is a little bit chaotic in the beginning, and you're not entirely sure what's going on, especially because the opening credits brings up, like, a character that I was like, wait a second, where is he gonna appear? And we'll get to that in a second, but I'm just like, okay, when's this guy gonna appear? And it's like, okay, they're kids going to a ship, and they need to see the captain, what's going on. But once they actually sit down and see the captain, it's really good. I think a lot of it has to do with this cast. Maurice Chevalier as Jacques Paganel does a great job as the professor, which is funny because he's not only an actor, but he's a French singer and entertainer. He's known for, he's done a lot of signature songs, but he's also, let's see if I can find a filmography. He's done a lot of Parisian films, Playboy of Paris, La Grande Mare, The Way to Love, Love in the Afternoon, Gigi. Is there anything that...
Well, there is one
Oh my god!
Yeah. You got to it?
He did the themes... He got the theme song of the Aristocats!
Yes, I was about to say that, exactly.
Go on.
Which makes sense. He's such a good singer, and given that the film takes place in Paris, it makes sense he'd be the one to sing that opening. It's just a shame they didn't make him a regular voice, because he has such a jovialness. You think they would have made him like a cat character or something.
Yeah, he has this almost Edwinian vibe about him where he can be serious, but he's also just very fun to watch. He brings joviality to a lot of the scenes, a lot of levity, and he has one of the better songs in the films, Enjoy It, which, like, I gotta admit, like, I didn't realize that Enjoy It was, like, on the Disney, like, sing-along soundtracks, but apparently Enjoy It is a big song that people knew before seeing the film, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's the only reason I even know, like, about the movies, because of this song. Like, it was on my mixed CD, and I'm like, this is so nice. What film is this from? And then I'm like, oh wait, we're coming up on that soon, aren't we? That'll be interesting to see the context of this. And now that I know the context, I realize just what a juxtaposition it is to the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's so funny because Enjoy It is this classic Disney song. It kind of reminds me of Zippity Doo Dah, or, the, like, Bedknobs and Broomsticks type songs where you interrupt the flow to have just, like, this jaunty little sing-along song. And it's nice that it came back for the Aristocats, but, like, I think Enjoy It is one of the centerpieces of this film, where they're on this expedition. They're in the middle of a desert with a giant tree. All of a sudden, flash flood. And so they're stuck up in a tree. And there's is it a tiger or a leopard?
No,
that
leopard.
It's
joins
supposed
them
to
in the
be a
tree?
jaguar, but it's portrayed by a leopard.
Yeah, that's why I was confused. There's a leopard that goes into the tree to escape from the flood, and then everything catches on fire. But before that, even with the leopard in the tree, this guy's singing like, "Oh yeah, we have bad weather. Just enjoy it. We might be drowning. But there's fruit everywhere. There's food in the trees and our packs, and it's really jaunty and jovial." I like Maurice as this actor. I think this character really brings just much needed heart and humor to the film. Would you agree with that, Doug?
Absolutely. I think he is the heart and soul of this whole thing. Really, he makes you want to, enjoy it. He is the soul of, it's not about the destination. It's all about the journey. Granted, he does want to get there, but he wants to enjoy the trip. They're stranded on a tree in the desert. There's a flood coming. He's got to keep up spirits. So enjoy it. They're on the mountains in South America, and everybody's kind of on edge, and he's just singing the whole ride there. He's so pleasant. He's that professor that kind of like has that Indiana Jones vibe to him, where he is professor by day, but he goes out in the field and does stuff at night.
Yeah, he may be French, but he does have that Indiana Jones about him.
And he's
Kat?
just so charismatic. I loved him.
Yeah, like not to slight the rest of the cast, but it's clear that Maurice Chevalier like carries this film, because like this would not be like near as enjoyable without him. Because again, he just has that infectious joy about him, and yes, like he does make some really big dumb decisions and assumptions and stuff, but like you kind of forgive him for it because you know that he did it with good intention, or at least was using like the best of his knowledge in the situation. But like I just love the songs he sings. Like they give him like 5 songs to sing in this, and granted they're kind of short and scattered and everything, but he just has a ball with it. He, sings with all of his heart. He makes the rest of the cast smile, even if they're annoyed with him. And it's just a joy. Like, I really wish they had him in more movies. Like, because, yeah, he was sung the theme of Aristocats, but, like, why wasn't he more live action stuff? It's honestly baffling to me. This is the only Disney thing he ever did.
Yeah, like, he carries so much of this. Like, the Let's Climb song, when they're climbing the mountain, he's the one starting it. Merci beaucoup. He sings all these French songs, and maybe he wanted to stick with French films, and they only had him because it was like an international film where they're going to different places. But he's just so fun. And then there's this points where he realizes his mistake. It's like, oh, I'm stupid. I'm so dumb. I'm so dumb. But he still does it in a fun way, and he shows his mistake, but he rectifies his mistakes. And he's just like, I've never been so happy to be wrong. Like, there are parts that he just sells, and I feel like he is the heart and soul of this film. Now, before we continue on to the rest of the cast, part of the reason I'm doing this is, while there is a goal, there's a lot of things that happen along the way, and I think we should touch upon the elephant in the room, because Jules Verne was many things, but he didn't write about things he technically knew. He was very interested in adventures in other places, in other countries. Unfortunately, he didn't have full research at the time. Now, granted, this was a novel written in 1868, so grain of salt there. They didn't know everything, but there's a lot of unfortunate racism in this film that we're going to have to talk about. Now, it's not portrayed as bad as some of the other racism where I have to give a trigger warning. I think unlike stuff like Peter Pan or The Crows in Dumbo or something like that, there is a sense of earnestness to this film, where you can tell that he's trying to portray these characters and these cultures in a better light than they come across. Unfortunately, he has an Italian playing a native Brazilian, an indigenous Brazilian, and then while they do have some actual Maori people, actual Samoans, most of them are just in the main part, and then there's a lot of white people in brownface. So there's that, and there's also the fact that, unfortunately, Jules Verne thought that the Maori were cannibals, which was not true. So, like, let's rip off the Band-Aid. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's the only reason I see why this is not on Disney Plus. It's one of those, we gotta sweep that under the rug sort of thing. Though, one thing I do want to note is there's a very blink and you miss it. If you're a Doctor Who fan, and I mean classic Doctor Who, one of the prisoners that they find, the Patagonian prisoners, is actually played by Roger Delgado, the original
The
master. Yes.
And that's so funny because they put him in the opening credits, and we were starting to see that. I'm like, wait a second, Roger Delgado?
Yeah, I immediately
I
ran to IMDb as soon as I saw that.
I'm like, oh my god. And it's like, it's a little bit weird to see some of the Italians in brownface, but then you see the master. It is so weird.
Yes. Granted, it's like I said, it's like a blink and you miss it thing, so it's not really something to, it was something I did want to bring up, but I don't think we need to go into very much detail about it, especially given the circumstances of it.
Yeah. Kat, what do you think?
So I actually had to do some research because I was genuinely curious about the assumptions of the indigenous natives portrayed in this movie. So they portrayed two different types of tribes in this. There's the South American Andean natives. They don't specify which tribes they are, but judging based on my research, they most likely were the, forgive my pronunciation, the Quichua and the Aymara tribes. So, yeah, they, for the most part, seem to be peaceful individuals. Obviously, they butt heads with Spanish conquistadors, as to be expected. But otherwise, nothing negative that I see. No mention of, cannibalism or anything. And then, of course, in terms of the Maori tribes, there actually were instances of cannibalism. However, this was done mostly to their enemies and mostly as part of their victories. Think of, I will drink my wine out the back of your skull type deal. So it's not completely unfounded, but yeah, the way they portray them in the movie is definitely over the top because they're portrayed as like warlike savages and stuff, which was not the case. They were much more toward pacifism and more toward like being artists than they were, warlike. It's only when they fight with white people that's when, that part comes out. But yeah, like I was surprised they named the tribe by name. Like it was an actual, like the Maori people are an actual, like real life indigenous tribe of New Zealand. And they're still around to this day. In fact, you might know some famous Maori actors. Think Taika Waititi or Jermaine Clement or Tamora Morrison. So they're very much still around. And yes, they have their assorted history and stuff. And, they've had their issues, but the point is they're still around, so it's kind of disheartening to see them portrayed so negatively in the film. And again, I get it because this was one of those adventure films made back in the 1800s. They still didn't have a lot of knowledge of, how the native tribes act. Everyone just assumed automatically that they were like illiterate savages that, killed white people, which isn't always unfounded, but still like a vast exaggeration. And like Doug said, yeah, I can easily see why this is not on Disney Plus and why it would be kind of tough to make a remake of this because you have to address that aspect. And it's kind of part of the story, so it's hard to ignore. But yeah, I don't know, it's tough. Because on the one hand, they do portray at least the South American natives in a somewhat positive light because they do ultimately help, the group survive and escape their plight. While the other tribe are like the big antagonist. So it can get very uncomfortable to say the least. It's done over the top enough where it's not overtly racist or hateful, but yeah, it's definitely one of those ick things that I can't see Disney Plus justifying in order to keep it on their roster.
It's much better than, say, something like Tonka, where they completely missed the mark. And the interesting thing to me, and what I want to bring up, is the Maori chieftain was played by Inia Te Wiata, and I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly, who is an actual Maori, someone who is, Samoan, and is famous for being this type of actor. He was the one leading them and participating, and he seemed like he was having a great time. So, like, I feel like that giving work to Maori people really good. At the same time, you also have Thalcave, the chief, played by Antonio Cifariello, an Italian, which unfortunately at the time a lot of Italian actors were meant to be natives. It's very weird, but that's because they had darker skin because Italy. And I'm Italian and Scotch Irish. So like I'm a little bit offended by that like stereotype that we could only get this in movies or The Godfather. But it's also kind of, it's a little bit weird that they did that for a native. You have kind of a white savior there. But even still, I still feel this earnestness. Not just from the book, but from the adaptation, where they're trying to portray these tribes and these cultures, and they're not trying to like make you hate them. I feel like, unlike some of the adaptations we've talked about, this really was trying to be a genuine adventure and not trying to be like Indiana Jones, where Indiana Jones was racist way past the time where it was okay to be racist. Like the Kali Ma stuff, yeah, no. Doug?
You betrayed Shiva. Yeah, I mean, well, let's face it, a lot of this, being in the 60s and everything, it's still in the, it's not okay, but we're still going to do it anyway because whatever era. We still have a long way to go at that point. I mean, I will say, yeah, like Kat said, at least while they may not have been portrayed in the best light, it could have been worse. And in some cases, they are at least, somewhat positively portrayed, even if it's, whatever, the wrong casting or whatever. Maybe they made some sort of compromise to, like the one chieftain of the Maori, maybe because they weren't actually eating anybody and were just, sort of a warrior doing dance. Maybe that had something to do with it. It's hard to say. It's long before any of us were born, so we can't really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can't really say. They do have an authentic Haka, which is pretty cool. But, like, again, they have a Maori in there. I only know a little bit about this because we've been watching a lot of Next Level Chef, and Mada, who is on the show, is Maori. But also, like, learning about Samoa, Maori, the island culture, Moana. Like, I've done a little bit of research, and from what I've researched and what Eliza has told me, specifically from, how things are, they tried more than you would expect. Kat, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, like I said, there was definitely an effort not to make them not like bad guys. I mean, the main bad guy is still George Sanders, which as it should be. So if anything, the tribes are more of like an obstacle. It's just, again, the portrayal is just what really, is like sad about it. And I get it. That's the time period, and that's kind of a cliche in a lot of adventure stories like that. And again, to their credit, like you said, at least they had Maori actors actually portraying Maori people instead of, again, having Italians in brownface, which is nice. It just sucks because, like, the ones who are, like, act more like allies on the side of good are portrayed by white people, and whilst the ones who are more, evil or portrayed demonically are the ones people of color. So there's still that unfortunate dichotomy there.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's a tough call because, like, it's like I said, I want to love this movie, and I do love this movie, but it has that ugly aspect to it that I can't ignore, and it's so unfortunate.
Yeah, it's something that I had to bring up now before we continued on, because Jules Verne meant well in 1860s, whatever, and they probably knew better at Disney, but, like, honestly, this film just has so much charm to it. Like, there's such tongue-in-cheek action. This guy, they fall off a mountain, and they're completely fine as they slide on a rock down it. Like it's an Indiana Jones raft sequence, only done like played completely straight. Like, and that was hilarious. And then one of the characters is picked up by a giant bird, and then it's shot, and he's somehow fine. And like there's a lot of these sequences where they just get caught up in the next thing, the flood, the leopard, these things just happen out of nowhere, and I'm just like, this is such wacky misadventures, and I'm having fun with it. They have fun with stuff. They get captured by Maori, but they're saved by one of Captain Grant's first mates, Bill Gay. Yes. They named him Bill Gay, and I'm like, Bill Gay is the best character. I love him. He's played by Wilford Bramble, who's an Irish actor, and let's see, he's been in a lot of films. I'm just trying to find some that I might have seen, but he's been in like Odd Man Out, Another Shore, Dry Rot, The Salvage Gang, Urge to Kill, The Boys, not the modern The Boys, a different The Boys, A Hard Day's Night, as Paul McCartney's grandfather, John McCartney. So he's been in a lot of stuff, and I really enjoyed seeing him in this film. Also, he was the White Rabbit in the Alice in Wonderland 1966 TV play. Interesting. But he just brings this like bombastic energy where he plays off the professor so well. He's just like, you think he's this crazy old man, but he's actually smart, and he and the professor work out a way to escape using hair, and you find out that he was the one who sent the message in the bottle, and he has the final line was like, the voice be the voice of a God-fearing man, but the hands are the hands of a forger. He forged Captain Grant's handwriting and wrote the note just to get people to come, even though Captain Grant is alive. But like, he's one of the better parts where he gets them out of the situations, and they evade capture from the Maori. It's a lot of fun. I love Bill Gay. Doug?
No, I can't really add much more. He's like this insane guy, but he turns out to be incredibly useful, and he's almost got that joy to match the professor. So yeah, he's a fun character, and the fact that there is that twist at the end that he actually was the one that made the note and put it in the bottle, that was pretty clever. And also that the captain did recognize him in the end.
Because the captain is there, and Captain's like, wait a second, I didn't send any note in a bottle.
Kat? I mean, it was pretty clever, because nobody would come looking for some rando named Bill Gay. So it makes sense why he would sign the captain's name, because he knows he's a man of influence, of character and status. So, hence why he signed it as him. It just happened to be real luck that he knew how to forge handwritings. In terms of his character, he kind of reminded me of Ben Gunn from Treasure Island. In that he's a character that's been marooned for so long, he's gone insane. So he's like really quirky and everything. But yeah, he was definitely a delight to have. I thought it was hilarious. He made like this like 50-foot rope using just the hair from like his head and his back and everything. And I'm just thinking of like that scene from Pirates of the Caribbean when what's his name was telling
Captain Jack.
No, like his first mate. He was telling the story of how Jack escaped being marooned off the island by roping a bunch of sea turtles and swimming to shore. And then Will's asking, oh, what did he use to make the rope? And then Jack shows up and he's like, human hair from my back.
I love that. I forget who that guy is too, but like that's a great scene. It had a lot of feeling like this.
Mr. Gibbs, that's who it was, Mr. Gibbs.
Mr. Gibbs.
But yeah, like I It was a good twist, I will admit. I didn't think like it was absolutely necessary that he had to be the one to send the note, but again, he's making all like these religious Bible quotes, which I'm told aren't actually Bible quotes, but hey, he's crazy, so we'll just roll with it. And I and I just like how he's able to like outsmart his way like into escaping and everything. Like he even like he pulls a Kevin McAllister and he gleefully sets the rope on fire as the Maori are trying to climb down it. Like that is like a sadistic sort of pleasure I can't help but enjoy.
He put gunpowder in the human hair rope. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Sure hope it's not soaked in kerosene.
And your description there, like this very much feels like Jules Verne was taking a crack at Treasure Island. And that's why I feel like I love Disney's Treasure Island, and seeing this, like, it brings those same vibes. Yes, it's not as good as Disney's Treasure Island, but it has such fun with its premise, and while it has that looming racism overhead, it just has these fun aspects. A tale about pirates, a tale about, smugglers and tribes that are trying to attack and you have to escape. It has all these like notes that really, really work. And like I could talk more about the story, but it's a very simple story, a very good, simple premise, simple execution. They go to different places. They try to find where their father is. They don't find him, but they find more clues. And it continues going. And when they find a search party for more people, they end up finding smugglers who leads them to their father. And it's just a lot of fun things there. Obviously, the true villain is Thomas Ayrton, who is the one kind of like smuggling, and there's a mutiny and there's all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it does have this Treasure Island feel to it, and I like that. Before we talk about the rest of the cast and a little bit more of the humor, do you have anything to add to that, Doug?
I don't really remember Treasure Island well enough to compare it.
Okay. Kat, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I do actually think that Search of the Castaways, like, it kind of feels like a spiritual successor to Treasure Island. It shares a lot of the same elements, in terms of, like, seeking out a treasure, per se, going on an adventure, dealing with a mutinous character, encountering, like, a crazy person, dealing with all this craziness and stuff. Like, it just feels like this is, like, Treasure Island, but dialed up to 11. That's how I feel. Like, it's less about the relationship between the characters and more about the journey. Although, like, again, there still is nice, like, character, like, bonds and stuff between the characters. I just feel like it kind of takes a backseat to all just the, chaotic, like, shenanigans that happen in the film. Because that's really where it shines. And in that case, again, I think this works pretty well. It just sucks that this doesn't have near as many adaptations as Treasure Island does. Because, well, that one you can, can argue is timeless, and you can do it any which way in any time period, as we clearly saw Disney did their own version much later on. Whereas Castaways is a little trickier because of, the time period.
Yeah, I would like to see them try to do this again without the racism, but, I mean, like, my favorite Treasure Island is Treasure Planet, and I cannot wait till we get to that era. But for right now, this is a great adventure. Let's talk a little bit about the side characters and some of the minor plot points that they add. We're not going to spend too much more time on this because the main plot is them trying to find their father. Mary Grant is played by Hayley Mills. This is her third Disney film, starring with Pollyanna, and then they also had The Parent Trap. So we have Hayley Mills again, which is another staple of the Disney debate, and she brings her A material here. I like her earnestness. I like that she's the one who really goads them into going on this expedition. She tricks Lord Glenarvan's son into tricking him to go on this journey. And I feel like, while they do have some misogyny later on, specifically from the son, John, I do think that she one-ups him at every turn, and the romance is kind of believable. until he starts saying, like, girls shouldn't be like this. And then I was like, there was one scene in the middle that I really didn't like, but I think Hayley Mills does a great job, and the dynamic between her and John is really good. I think it's a nice subplot, having them kind of work together. Her tricking him tricking his father. I thought it was fun. Doug?
I don't know. It's like a lot of the characters, Hayley Mills included, feel just like they're kind of along for the ride. Like there's not much to them. I don't really remember much of what Hayley Mills even does, to be honest. Aside from like her being in that romance with the kid that's the guy that's probably like 2 years older than her. So yeah, there was a bit of discomfort for me and Kat when watching that. I mean, she does okay. I'm not gonna say that she was, doing bad. She just wasn't really given much to work with. And it's like, and you could say definitely like, I remember her just kind of not being very affected, especially when we're going with the avalanche rock slide while everybody's kind of just standing there, even though they should be falling off these rocks.
No, but then we wouldn't have a Disney theme park ride.
I mean, it is so ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, that obviously I don't think that's Hayley Mills' fault. I'm pretty sure that's more the director not really pushing them hard enough to realize, hey, you're on a moving surface right now that could potentially kill you. Emote more, damn it.
I mean, I can see your point there. I just think Hayley Mills tricking them and like kind of starting them on this journey. She did a lot more than her brother in this did, which I barely remember anything he did.
He was like basically he was more of the I'm in the movie sort of thing. I'm just there because I guess we need to fill a quota.
What do you think, Kat?
Yeah, I do agree. Like, Hayley isn't given much to work with, but regardless, she still brings her all, and it does ultimately get the ball rolling in terms of, trying to find the guy who is most likely to help her find her father, and she is successful in getting him to agree to this, even if she has to be a little manipulative about it, and she does hold her own against the misogynistic love interest. So I do admire her in that sense. It's just, again, it's not her fault. It's more like both the circumstances of the time and the novel that she is not allowed to do as much as she could have, because like she could easily fight against the bad guys the same as the love interest does, but again, this is the 60s. Women weren't allowed to be combative unless it was like in an acrobatic sense or an indirect sort of way. But she still tries, though, and, like, I actually thought she was a fairly decently written character. It just sucks that, again, they have to make the love interest, like, a misogynistic piece of crap who has to bring up the fact that she's a girl. It's like, oh, you held your own pretty well out there. Why, thank you. Yeah, but, you're a girl, and that's not normal for a girl. I just want to let you know you're a girl, and that's not how girls act. You understand you're a girl, right? Like... the way they kept bringing it up, I'm like, yes, we get it. It doesn't matter. You're out here trying to survive, all right? Just shut your damn mouth. So, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I really hated the love interest. Like, I know he has a name, but like, I don't even want to acknowledge him because again, I get why he's there. I get like, because here's the thing: in the novel, it was the Lord and his wife who were the ones that start the expedition, and they do it out of the kindness of their heart, not because Hayley Mills' character like manipulates them or their son or something. So the son's like a totally made up entity, again, because Hayley Mills starring in it, and Disney wanted to age her up gracefully, and that because she's a girl, that involves giving her a love interest. Thankfully they didn't go like all the way in terms of kissing, because again, the age difference, it's not huge, but it's enough to make you uncomfortable considering, he was 19 and she was 16. So they actually
Yeah.
cut out a kissing scene. But they apparently Hayley Mills did actually like suggest the actor Michael Anderson Jr. to play him because they had been in a movie before and had really good chemistry. And they had warned her ahead of time, like, "Oh, we want you to have a kissing scene. Who did you want to pick?" So at least she had some, she had a choice in who she picked. And it was ultimately better that they didn't, go the route of them actually sharing an on-screen kiss. From what I heard, that does change in the Moon Spinners, but we'll get to that movie. But
We
yeah,
shall
like,
see.
yeah. But otherwise, I thought she was fine as a character. If you cut out the love interest, they could have given her a lot more to do. Her brother's a total non-entity. Like, he has no business being in this movie. You could cut him and, like, nothing would be lost. Like, he gets 2 big scenes. He gets captured by a condor, and he goes on the rope to try to escape. And that's really, like, the only reason he exists in this film is to, like, be a part of that rope scene, because he's so small and scrawny, he can fit through the bars to escape, and then, is light enough to swing back and forth on the rope without snapping it. But yeah, he just, like, is totally worthless. And from what I heard, he was originally going to be played by Hayley's brother, which would have been fine, because again, he's such a non-character, it wouldn't have mattered, but I guess their mother thought that, oh, Disney got their hooks into my husband and my daughter, they're not going to take my son too, so she wouldn't let him be in the movie. So, I mean, I can sort of understand that. But yeah,
yeah, I
mean,
can kind of understand that.
Yeah. But otherwise, like I said, Hayley I thought was good. The love interest, he was awful, like, not in terms of acting, just how he was portrayed. And again, the brother is just a non-character. So that's how I feel about that.
I think I think John was well acted, but like that character is a hit or miss. He's very cocky, he's very cocksure, and I liked him up until he started being misogynistic, and then I'm like, nah. Do we want to talk about Lord Glenarvan? He's just the butt of the joke, played by Wilfred Hyde-White. And he's basically the butt of the joke. He's a rich person who thinks he knows a lot more than he does. He's always wrong. And I like that, but he really plays second fiddle to Professor Paganel, and I feel like Maurice did so much better in that juxtaposition. Would you agree with that, Doug?
Yeah, no, I mean, he's basically, the racist British man. He's granted he does help them out and uses his own boat for everything, so I'll give him that. But yeah, like there are definitely instances of him just like being the problem. The way he talks to some of the natives, just he basically causes their Sherpas to leave, because he's just so not understanding of the situation that, oh, they're actually trying to help us, and they're trying to warn us that if you stay there for the night, you could potentially die in an avalanche. But no, it's like, But yeah,
My God, that scene.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, he's okay. But of course, he does allow for his ship to get hijacked by Shere Khan, or the What's My Crime guy from 101 Dalmatians.
What do you think, Kat?
So here's my thoughts on the character. Yes, he is obviously like a stupid and mildly racist, like a typical rich person who acts accordingly and such. But at the same time, I can't bring myself to really hate him, because the actor, like Wilfred Hyde-White, actually has really good comedic timing. So when he is inevitably, like, proven wrong or, gets a comeuppance or something for the way he behaves, it's actually funny watching his reaction when that happens. And even then, he's not really portrayed as villainous too much. It's like, yes, he's still kind of an asshole, but he's still ultimately helping the children out of the goodness of his heart. And even when he gets screwed around majorly, like, has his life put in danger, has natives take his money, and has to, like, sail around the world on a hunch and almost dies several times, he still sticks with them. He still, helps them. He still, like, goes out of his way to help. Like, he could have just called it quits at any time. He could have left the kids stranded. He could have choked the hell out of Paganel when he was, getting in his face about being wrong or something. But he doesn't. So I can't fully hate him for that. And like I said, his character is a little better in the novel because, again, he's more altruistic. But at the same time, apparently he also just killed the Maori chief in the book. So that's a big negative against him. But otherwise, in terms of his portrayal, I thought he did a good job, and especially when you consider he wasn't even the first choice for this role. Originally supposed to go to Charles Langdon, but unfortunately he was going through cancer at the time, so he had to drop out, and that's why Wilfred got the role instead. And I honestly don't think he's that bad. Again, he has some decent timing. Like, I just love the look on his face when they're trapped in the tree, and the whole time, like, he had been harping about the fact that, there's no way the guy could have sent a message in a bottle, and it was eaten by a shark. Sharks don't eat bottles. And then he himself, in that desperate situation, actually writes his own note, which he puts in a bottle, but when he throws it in the water, it gets eaten by a crocodile.
Like, that's classic humor right there, and I think he does a great job. He's still not as good as Maurice, but really great job.
Right, but that's the point. He's supposed to be, like, the butt of the joke, and you can laugh at him because he's, like, the stupid rich guy. And again, that's his whole thing. He's not evil or malicious. He's just privileged and stupid. That's it. And, he makes a good foil. So, that's how I feel. Like, again, I've encountered other rich folks in the Disney films we watched that I hated much more than I do this guy. Like, this guy is not bad by that but much of a margin.
I guess the last thing I want to bring up today is that this film was devised by Disney to be a vehicle for Hayley Mills, who is under contract to make a film a year for 5 years. So she had to make a film every year for 5 years as her third role. I don't think it did as well legacy-wise, but box office-wise, it made $21 million, and that's nothing to sneeze at. Like, that is actually really good, considering, like, some of the other films we've seen. In its initial release, it earned $4.9 million in North American theatrical rentals alone. It was one of the 12 most popular movies at the British box office in 1963. So, I think this was a success. Would you agree with that, Doug?
Yeah, I'd agree. Obviously, it's not like it didn't make any money. It's not like it didn't make. Hang on. It's not like, it completely bombed at the box office. It did make some money, so there is that. May not have been what they anticipated, but hey, It's definitely, like, obviously the legacy of it is kind of hit or miss. But the fact that, we do have some songs from it on, some of the, among all the known Disney stuff, there's, nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah. Kat?
Yeah, I could see why this was a big hit. Again, it was a big adventure film, and it starred Hayley Mills as well as other characters, so it makes sense that this was big at the time. And I'm glad it got the acknowledgement then, because let's be honest, there's not many time periods where this would have been allowed to fly. Like, you release something like this nowadays, you're gonna get comments and stuff. But even then, I still think it has a charm to it. It has a whimsy that, for the 60s, it was perfect. Like, an absolute perfect time for this to be released. Fun fact, it almost didn't come to be because Hayley Mills almost burned the set down. From what I read, after they filmed that scene in the tree where they all got soaked in the rainstorm and everything, she absentmindedly threw a pair of wet trousers onto an electric heater and left the room, and it went up in flames. So she almost burned down the set. Thankfully, a crew member saw it and put it out. But yeah, this movie almost didn't come to be because of Hayley Mills, which is ironic because it was being made for her. But accidents happen, and thankfully no one was hurt. It's
one of those, isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Yeah. just to add again to the chaos that this film embodies. One thing I think we should talk about, though, like, we have to, because that's a big part of this film and a big glaring, both a glaring issue, but also a reason why it works the way it does. The special effects in this. Can we agree?
Yeah.
These special effects are both horrendous but amazing.
Absolutely.
It is clearly green screened in, or it's not very good green screen, because you could see the seams like when they're on the boulder and doing stuff, but you can tell that they're not in the same vicinity as the leopard. They weren't harmed. Like it honestly, I'm actually happier with it because of that.
Well, it's not just that. There's like other things. Like there's again the obvious green screen, but then you see like they trying to push rocks and it's obvious that they're styrofoam. You see them trying to climb things and you can see the wires that are like, you know, holding them up. You see the condor, which is very obviously fake. And like again, that whole condor scene is like so crazy to me cuz like yes, condors do get that big. Definitely. They're basically flying raptors. But are they capable of picking up humans? No. No, they are not, because they are scavengers, they do not hunt, they have weak grip force, so that entire scene is totally unbelievable. But just the mere visual of, like, that giant-ass bird carrying the kid up in the air, and then when it gets shot, it just goes into, like, a twirling position instead of just dropping out of the sky. That just will never not be funny to me. And then there's
the nonchalantness of how he was in the claws. He's just like, I guess I'm letting this happen now. Bye.
I'm going on an adventure. But, and not to mention the scene when they're trying to escape from the Maori tribe. What's their solution to losing them? They roll a rock onto an open lava vent, and the rock explodes, triggering an eruption. Yeah. That does not happen, and yet somehow it works. It just again,
this makes no sense, and yet it's working.
Exactly. It's like again all the stuff they do, and again, like you mentioned, the Indiana Jones sequence where they're like riding down the mountain in the snow. Like I love how they drop from the sky, land on the ground, and you just hear Hayley Mills going, "Oh." It's like, did the rock say "oh"? It was just so.
I say, this is most unorthodox. This simply isn't done.
But again, that's what adds to it. It's like, on the one hand, I should be critiquing the hell out of this film for using such terrible green screens, such terrible effects and props and stuff, and incorporating the people and with the puppetry and all that. But the journey itself is just so crazy that seeing the cheesiness of this just makes it make sense, and it just adds to the enjoyability. It's like watching a riff tracks almost. Like, I can imagine they'd have a field day with this movie.
It's one of those where there's clearly effort in it, but they only, you know, they half-assed it at some point where, you know, you had the thing and you didn't commit to it.
It's almost like it feels like a tongue-in-cheek parody, even though it's not. But it's weird because of the different tones. Like, my final thoughts on this film. I think this is a great film. It has the humor that I really like. It has bits that feel like they're ripped out of Airplane, where they're played straight for laughs. It has all these, like, humorous effects shots, but it has genuine adventure and drama. Does it have bad points? Yes. Is it racist? Yes. But this is one of those films where even me and Eliza together would watch this again. Because despite those elements, despite the problems, it comes together. It creates this sort of dichotomy where it's both like pleasant and light, action and intense, and humorous and parody. It's so weird, but it really works. Don't watch Moon Pilot if you want something like this. Watch In Search of the Castaways. That's what I think. I think this is Moon Pilot done better. Doug?
I'd say, yeah, that kind of is definitely in terms of you get more adventure for your buck and a lot less cringe. There is still cringe, but this is definitely, like I said, I see why it's not on Disney Plus, but they really could put it on Disney Plus if they just put a disclaimer before. Excuse me. But I would highly recommend, if you can find an old copy of the DVD or VHS, or if you can rent it on Fandango or Amazon or whatever rental on demand thing, because it's definitely worth watching.
Also, I feel like this is the first film where the Sherman Brothers song lyricisms stand out. Whereas, like, before, their melody stood out, but this really is an earworm. It's catchy. Kat, final thoughts?
No, I enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. Because, again, I was having flashbacks to both, like, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Treasure Island and Swiss Family Robinson. And the first two, I liked well enough. And then Swiss Family Robinson was just eh. But this was, like, the first, like, real action-adventure that I really, really enjoyed. Just, again, because of how crazy everything was. And, like, it had my attention the whole time. And yes, granted, Act 2 kind of feels superfluous. Because they go all the way to South America thinking the dad's there, only for him to not be. So it kind of makes it feel pointless, because it doesn't really tie into the third act. But it kind of doesn't matter, because you got that whole crazy scene of them being in the tree, with the flood under them and the crocodiles. You have the jaguar in the tree. Everything's on fire. There's a water spout coming at them. It's just pure insanity. So that, to me, made, like, the whole superfluous of the scene, like, moot. Because, again, you're having a good time watching the insanity play out. So, like, it's very great in terms of storytelling, in terms of visuals, and just keeping your attention. And to me, that's what makes, like, a good action-adventure film. Because the worst thing you could be as an action-adventure film is be boring. And this was certainly not boring. I will say this movie is rather hard to come by. And, like, the only reason I was able to easily watch it is because I actually own a copy. I actually bought one, I want to say at least 20 years ago, at the video store by me as it was closing down. I bought it. I never opened it in the 20-something years I've had this. So when I finally did open it, I feel like I was unearthing the Ark of the Covenant because of, like, how well this thing was sealed. And when I looked up online, it's like the only copies I found, they charge outrageous shipping fees. And they even combine the movie with Treasure Island. So it is like a rarity. Even on streaming, you gotta pay for this. So, like, I feel like I'm extremely lucky in that regard to actually have a physical copy. So yeah, if you're able to get your hands on one, for Christ's sake, hold on to it. That thing is precious. You are not gonna find, like, an actual good version of that out there. I promise you. Not unless you're willing to pay huge fees.
I definitely want to try. I paid the $3 rental fee for this on YouTube, or not YouTube. It was I believe Amazon Prime, and I think it was worth the price of admission. And it was a great watch. It has its problems, but I had a lot of fun with it. It feels like a return to form for the classic old school adventure films from Disney. It's not perfect, but compared to a lot of the slog that we've been through, this is a classic. And I can see why it's not in many rotations these days, but it's a lot of fun. I would check it out if you're a Disney fan. Just, the caveat, it does have those issues. It does have a bit of racism, but I think that it isn't a huge detraction or detriment to this film. With that said, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest of buns.
I'm Kat Macberrie.
I'm Doug Macberrie.
And next time, we're going to be continuing with the 60s as we look at Miracle of the White Stallions. And my friends, my buns, after these next two films, we're going on an incredible journey. It's almost time for the Homeward Bound marathon, guys. So I'm excited. I'm excited. With that being said, have a good one, everybody. And just remember, Pulp Fiction old school serials can be a lot of fun. But you gotta make sure that you tone down the racism in modern day. So Indiana Jones doesn't really get a pass.